Good. Oh, here we are. Today's daf is daf Hezvav in the Masechta Gittin, and we are beginning by about a third of the way down on daf Yudalid Amid Beis. Okay, third of the way down of daf Yudalid Amid Beis. Here we go. The Gemara is discussing like this: the concept of when somebody says hoylech. You see, if a borrower wants to pay back money to a lender, so if a borrower tries to pay back money to a lender, we want to know when he says to a shaliach, a messenger, deliver this money to the lender. So the lender wouldn't want the borrower to back out of it and say, "Oh no, let me rethink about paying the guy." So the question is, does the shaliach have to return the money once he receives it? He was not made a messenger by the lender, but he was appointed as a shliach from the borrower, and the borrower said hoylech. Okay, so here we are. Hoylech mon ploini. If a borrower or even somebody wants to give a gift to somebody, okay, and he says the word hoylech. Hoylech means to deliver this money to so and so. And the question is, can he back out? What happens? So the Gebraisa says like this: V'holach, the shliach went ubikshu v'loy mitzod. He searched for the guy that he was supposed to the recipient. Either it's the lender or the recipient of the gift, and he didn't find him alive. Maybe he died. So Tanacha, the one Brisa learned, what should the shliach do? Yachzur l'mishalech. He should go back and give the money back to the sender. But Tanya Idach, and another Brisa said, what should he do? He should send it liyorshe mish nishtalchuloi. He should give it over to the people, to the inheritors of the recipient. Either they're inheritors of the lender, or they're inheritors of the one receiving the gift. And the reason is because there's no backseas over here. One could say that there is no backseas over here, since it was already in the hands of the Mele, he shouldn't give it back. And this is where we're up to. Hi, Lewis. We just began. The Yudalit Amebei is about a third of the way down. Lema, let us say, Pahal Kami Palgi. This is what the machlekes between the two brises are. The Mar Savar, the first brisa held hoylech. When a man says hoylech, deliver this money, is kizchi dummy. So it's kizchi. In other words, he's like telling the shaliach, you acquire it on behalf of the recipient. You require it on the behalf of the lender. So therefore, there's no backseas, and that's why when the recipient died, you give it to his yarshim. Umar Savar hoylech, when the mishaleach said hoylech, deliver it, lav kischi. It doesn't mean that the shliach should acquire it on behalf of the recipient, but rather if the recipient is not there, then he could call back what he gave to the shliach, and you bring it back to the mishaleach, and that would be the first.
All right. He should give it back to the man who gave it to him.
Yeah, to give it back to the man. So the Gemara says not so simple. Omer Abba Memo, the Kili Alma, everybody holds hoylech lav. When everybody holds, when the shliach says, when the man says, deliver it, it doesn't mean for the shliach to hold on to it, to keep it. V'loy kasha, and it's not difficult. Ha bibari, a healthy person, when he says hoylech, then it's not lav kischi, and therefore you have to return it back to the mishalech, to the sender. But when do you not return it back to the sender? Ha b'shchiv merah, beautiful thing. When a person is mamish on his intensive care and he's about to pass, so then there's a special halacha that anything that he says is binding. Anything that he says is shchiv merah, is whatever he says, we have to follow through. So therefore, the second brisa says that you give it to the recipient, and if the recipient is not there, you give it to his yorshim, is talking about when the sender was a shchiv merah. So it's automatically, when the shliach got it, he was acquiring it on behalf of the recipient, because when a shchiv merah says something, we have to follow through no matter what. The Gemara says, Rav Zvid says, you can say the two brises is ha v'ha b'shchiv merah. Both brises are talking about when the man was a shchiv merah, when the man was on his deathbed. So now you have to explain, and why you have to explain why do you return it to the original mishaleach? according if the shchimara, if the person when he said it, the mishalech, the sender, was on his deathbed, so then certainly you have to follow through. The answer is the isa b'shas matan mois. When do you have to give it is only if the makabel was there when he received it. The recipient was alive. The recipient was alive when he said it. In other words, the recipient was there when he gave it over, when he gave over the money, and therefore, so it's automatically when the shliach got it, he acquired it on behalf of the recipient. The person that received the money, that's supposed to receive the money, passed away prior to the shliach getting it, before the shliach got it. So the shliach got it in error. He wasn't zeicha because the recipient already was passed away. In that case, you don't have to. The words of the shchivim are not binding, and so therefore, when the shliach realized that the person that's supposed to receive the money is not around, he should return it back to the sender. Rav Papa says habawar babari. Both prices are talking about when the person was healthy. So hoylech is what? Lav kischi. Hoylech is lav kischi. Is lav kischi. And if so then if hoylech is lav kischi, then ha the mismakabel b'chaya noisen, or the misnoisen b'chaya makabel, which means that when do you say that you the recipient was that you give it to the recipient is only if that the recipient died. In other words, the sender died while the recipient is still alive. You see, if the sender died, so there is a new concept. When a person said something and appointed a shliach to do something, and then he died, there's something called mitzvah l'kayim divrei emes. After somebody dies, you try to fulfill his last wishes, no matter what. This has nothing to do with a shchimara. This is a new thing. So if the guy died, if the mishaleach died, and the recipient was still alive, then even if the recipient subsequently passed on, you give the money to his inheritors, the recipient inheritors. But if the recipient died first, before the sender died, then you return it back to the sender. And if the sender is not there, you give it to his yarshim. So that's how we resolve the two brises that seem to contradict each other, questioning what should the shliach do? Give the money back to the sender, or give it over to the yarshim, the inheritors of the recipient. Nu Gemara. Lema, let us say, hoylech kischidami. That when the fact that the Tanya, in other words, when a person says hoylech, deliver something, is that meaning that the shliach should acquire it on behalf of the recipient? That is a machlokes tanaim. Let us say the Tanya we learned in the brisa hoylech mana leplain. If a man says, take this money to so and so, if he searched for him and he didn't find him, then he should return it back to the sender. Meis Mishaleach, let's say the sender died. Rab Nosson, Rab Yaakov, Amr Yachzur Yarshim Mishaleach. Rab Nosson and Rab Yaakov said, return it to the Yarshim of the sender. The Yeshram, some say, no, Yarshim Mishin Shtal Chulai. You give it to the Yarshim of the person who is the recipient. If the recipient passed away, then you give it to his Yarshim. You don't return it back to the sender. Rab Yehuda Nasi, Amr Mishum Rab Yaakov, Shom Mishum Rab Meir. Mitzvah l'kayim divrei emes. If the sender died, you should follow through on his last wishes. We'll see what this all means. Rav Chacham says you split it. You split the money. We don't know what you should do with it. Give it to half to the sender's yarshim and half to the recipient's yarshim. The Kan Amru in Bavel, they used to say, Kol ma sheyishu shliach yaseh. In this scenario, whatever the shliach decides, if he likes the sender, he should give the money back to the sender. If he likes the recipient, the shliach should give the money back to the recipient, give it over to the recipient. Again, we'll leave it up to the shliach to decide what to do. Rab Shimon Hanasi al Yodei Hayamaisa. Rab Shimon Hanasi said, I had the same story, that a sender sent some money to somebody, the recipient passed away, and then the sender passed away. But Amru, and I went to the Rabbanan, and they told me Yachzru that the money should be returned to the inheritors of those that sent them. So my love, let us say, all these people, all these Tanoim, are arguing one simple concept of hoylech. When the sender said the word hoylech to the shliach, doesn't mean that the shliach should acquire the money on behalf of the recipient. Tanakama Sova hoylech lav kasi. Therefore, when you say hoylech lav kasi, so then the shliach did not acquire it on behalf of the recipient, so you always return it back to the sender. Rav Nasser Rav Yaakov nami hoylech lav kasi. Rav Nasser Rav Yaakov hold hoylech is lav kasi. But afagav the mis, even if the sender died, the lo yamrina mitzvah l'kaim diremes. The Rabbi Yosef and Yaakov hold that we don't say that just because he died we should still follow through. There's no concept of fulfilling the deceased person's last wishes. There's no such a concept. The Yeshayim and the Yeshayim hold the opposite. Now the Yeshayim in this brisa hold hoylech kizchi. When a man said hoylech, send the money, it means to the shliach to acquire it. So therefore, once the shliach acquired it, he doesn't return the money back to the sender. He returns it to the recipient. Of course, if the recipient's not there, which is our case, give it to the yorshim of the recipient. Rabbi Huda Hanasi Amar B'Shem Rabbi Yaakov B'Shem Meir, they hold hoylech lav kaschi. Really, hoylech is lav kaschi, and therefore you should technically return the money back to the sender. But the sender died. But since the sender died, you have to keep what the last wishes of the deceased. And since the sender died, and we know his last wish was this money should go to the recipient, you have to follow through to give it to the recipient. Of course, if he's not there, give it to his yarshim. The Chacham say you should divide up the money because they don't know what to do with the money. The Kan Amru Shuda Adif, and in Babel they said, let the shliach decide. Rab Shimon, Hanasi Maisas Lashmina, Rab Shimon is just giving you a practical story. So what we just went through, this exercise, was to prove that there's a machloikas tanaim. If the word hoylech, when the Mishalech says the word hoylech, doesn't mean for the recipient, doesn't mean schi, doesn't mean that the shliach should acquire the money on behalf of the recipient. It's a machloikas tanaim. Says the Gemara, like it's not so. Bevari de kuliyama pligi. If this Bryce was talking about a healthy person, everybody would agree that hoylech is lav kaschi, and therefore you should always return the money back to the sender. Here we're talking about somebody who passed away, who's on his deathbed. He didn't pass away. So is there the machlokes of Rab Lazar and Rabbanan? Is there a concept that if somebody is on a shchiv mara, he's on his deathbed, whatever he says, we automatically follow through without a kinyan? The Tanakh, we learned in the Mishnah, somebody not doing what you're supposed to do. He says he's dividing up, deciding which son he wants to give more of his assets to. In other words, technically, when a person dies, you divide it equally and you give pishnayim to the bakar. But he's deciding he likes this son better than this son, so he wants to give more money of his possessions to this one as opposed to the other son. So no matter what the condition of the father is, if he's even if he's on his deathbed, there needs to be a kinyan in order to validate his verbal tzavah. The chashim sheyesh l'machrayis, if we're dealing, he's trying to divide up real estate. There has to be a kinyan of either money, of document, or chazaka. If we're dealing with movable objects, then there has to be, in order to effectuate this verbal statement, there has to be some sort of mishicha kinyan where he picks up and he holds on to the metaltalin. Some say if the guy's on his deathbed, he's a shchiv mara. The fact that he said it automatically makes it effective. Amrullah. So the Chachamim said to Rab Lazar, you don't hold of shchiv mara is like a done deal. If someone's on his deathbed, that's a done statement. But Ma'aseh b'iman shel b'nei Rochel, there's a story with the mother of this b'nei Rochel. I don't know. His name was mother of b'nei Rochel. This lady was sick. V'amra, and she said, Tinasein, we go to Tezvav Ma'alf, Tinasein kvedesi lebiti. I want my expensive brooch to be given to my daughter. Now, she didn't make anybody a shliach to do this, because that's important, because there's no mitzvah if she passes on that we have to follow through. She said her wishes was that her brooch should go to her daughter. And she's saying, V'hi name Asamana. And she was on her deathbed when she said this. And she said, that my brooch is worth 12 money. Umesa. And she died. The Kima Chachamim is the Vara, and the Chachamim followed through because she was a Shchiv Mara. She was on her deathbed when she said it. So we see that there's a concept of Shchiv Mara. Amalehem. So Rabbi Lazar said, no, we don't trust that story. B'nei Rachel tikabarim imam. Their mother should be buried. In other words, this mother of B'nei Rachel was planting kalayim in her fields, according to Rabbi Lazar's opinion. Therefore, whatever they did, whatever that story is about B'nei Rachel, was shloika halacha. There's no such a thing, according to Rabbi Lazar, of a shchiv merah saying something, and we automatically have to follow through. So Tanakama says, back to our case, where a guy made a shliach, and he found the recipient dead, and then the shliach died, and then the sender died. Still, Tanakama Rab Lazar, Kana holds like Rab Lazar, even though the guy was a shchiv merah when he pointed the shliach, it's still, the money goes back to the sender, because there's no mitzvah on shchiv merah. Rab Nasser Yaakov Nami Rab Lazar. They also hold Rab Laka, and Afagav the Mis, even if the guy the Shchiv Merah died, Lo Yamrin Mitzvah Kaim Deremes. The Yesh Oimrim says no, you have to give it over to the B'Shaleach, to the recipient. If not the recipient, then his Yarshim to Rabbanim. They hold like Rabbanim that the Shchiv Merah, whatever he says, is automatically effectuated. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Shamashim Meir Rab Lazar. He holds also like Rab Lazar that there's no such a thing of Divrei Shchiv Merah is automatically without a kinyan. Mio, but they hold Heich the Mace. If the Shchiv Merah subsequently died, Amina Mitzvah Kaim Divrei Mace, which is another concept that if someone dies, you should follow through on his last wishes. The Chachamim Yachleiku, because Misapkele, they are not sure about the if you paskin like Rab Lazar or paskin like Rabbanim. Kanam Rishuda Adif, and in Bavel they said just split it. Rab Shimon ben Nasi just gave a story that they actually returned it back to the sender. So the question is, so that ends that sugya. So we don't know for sure if hoylech is kischi. There seems to me that the Gemara is bending towards hoylech lav kischi. Gemara asks a question. Yibaylahu. Last question. Rab Shimon and Nasi, or you say the Rab Shimon the Nasi. Was that mean Nasi? Was Rab Shimon a Nasi or B'Shmei the Nasi Kamar? Did he say it in the name of the Nasi? Because that's an odd statement. Rab Shimon pan Nasi. Han Shishma Dam Rav Yosef Halacha Rav Shimon Hanasi. The halacha is like Rav Shimon the Nasi. But I could still ask you a question. Nasi, was he a Nasi or the common Shmei the Nasi? Or is it Rav Shimon who's saying in the name of the president, but he himself was never a president? Teku, the Gemara doesn't know, was Rav Shimon a Nasi or his statements were in the name of the Nasi, the anonymous Nasi of his time? Kufa, we learned in the Baraisa, Rav Yosef, Rav Shimon a Nasi. That halacha is like Rav Shimon Nasi, and that you will return it back to the Mashaleah. But the question is, Rav Shimon Nasi, if you're returning back to the Mashaleah, then what we just said, that price is talking about when the guy was on his deathbed. Well, Kaimelon, the halacha is Divrei Shchiv Merah. We paskin that whatever words that come out of a guy on his deathbed is kiksuvim mismurundami. It's as if it's written given over in a document. In other words, no kinyan is needed. So how can you paskin like Rav Shimon? And the Bryce is talking about Shchiv Merah, which you're returning the money back to the Mishleach. So the Rabbi Yosef answers the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef Makalad B'Brysa. The Rabbi Yosef will tell you that Bryce is talking about a healthy person. So if it's talking about a healthy person, the Yosef Mishleach come, but the Bryce says that you should return it back to the inheritors of the sender, the Kaim Lo Mitzvah, the Kaim Direi Meis. But we know that if the sender died, there's another halacha which we paskin that we follow through on the last wishes that if a person died. And says the Gemara Tani, you have to talk about that it's a healthy person and he never died. And what the Brisa says, Yachzru l'mashleach, you return it back to the original sender. Hadron Allah Hamevi Kama. We begin the next parak Bez Hashem. Hamevi get from Medina Siyam. Someone brings a get from Medina Siyam. Omar, and he said, Befani Nechtab. He said, Befani Nechtab, this in front of me, the star was written, Avaloi Befani Nechtab. But I didn't see it being signed. So he said half the statement. Or he said Befani Nechtam, Avaloi Befani Nechtav. He said Befani Nechtam and not Befani Nechtav. So he only said half a statement. Or he said Befani Nechtav Kuloi Uvani Nechtam Chetzioy. He says, in front of me, I saw the whole thing written, says the shtar, but I only saw one shliach, one aid sign on the shtar. So I only saw half the signatures. Well, what if happens if he says Befani Nechtav Chetzioy? I saw only half the get written, Uvani Nechtam Kuloi, but I saw both aidim sign on the shtar, on the get. So basically, he's not saying the complete statement that automatically validates this get. So the Mishnah says in all cases puzzle. All cases is puzzle because Chazal enacted that when a person brings a get from Medina Siyam, if he wants to be believed and make this a kosher get, the shliach has to say both b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam. Let's say you have one person, you have two people bringing a get, and two shlichim. Echad omer b'fanei nechtav. One says b'fanei nechtam, but echad omer b'fanei nechtav pasam. So what we're going to learn is that so we're going to learn that both of them are shlichim, and one shliach said b'fanei nechtav, and one shliach said b'fanei nechtam. It's possible. Why? Because it looks like if one person is going to say b'fanei nechtam, people will come to think that one aid is enough to validate a star. They won't know that this is a get and this is an exception that we accept one aid. What makes a get? How do we know that one aid by a get is different than a regular kiyum star? Is because he says b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam. But if one person is just saying b'fanei nechtam, so everybody's going to ask, who validated this get? Who validated this get? They'll say this one person who said b'fanei nechtam. So people will say, oh, to validate any star, any document, it would be enough to have one aid. That's why it's possible. We had this Gemara discussed this on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. What happens if Shnayim Oimrim b'fanei nechtam? Two people say b'fanei nechtam. They're not the shlichim. They just say we saw that it was written l'shma. The echad and one the shliach said b'fanei nechtam, and he said it's b'fanei nechtam. Puzzle. That's puzzle. Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. Now we have one that says b'fanei nechtam. It's puzzle. We said the reason why it would remain puzzle, even though you have two saying b'fanei nechtam, is because still you only have one person saying b'fanei nechtam, and people are going to say that any star, one person's enough to validate a star. But Rabbi Yehuda says machshir. He will say it's hechsher, because here instead of one saying b'fanei nechtam, you're having two people, two eidim saying we saw it written l'shma. So that's enough of a differentiation between this case. Nobody's going to make a mistake by seeing this go through to validate every star if there's one aid saying validating a star. Echad oimer b'fanei nechtam. The shliach says, I saw it was written l'shma. Ushnayim oimrim, and they're not two shluchim, they're not shluchim. They're just from somewhere else. They say b'fanei nechtam. We saw that it was written and signed kosher. It's kosher. Because you have two eidim validating the chasimas, and you have one aid, the shliach, saying it was written lishma, so that the Mishnah says it's kosher. So basically, this Mishnah told you a chiddush, which you don't think it's such a chiddush, that a shliach coming from Medina Sayam has to say b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara asks, why do we need this new Mishnah? We have this first Mishnah in the Masechta that tells you have to say b'fanei nechtam. Maybe get Medina Siyam, tzarich shiyayme b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. That's what the first Mishnah told you that. So what did this Mishnah tell you differently? This Mishnah says if you missed a word, it's not good. So the Gemara says, imahi have a minute tzarich ve'ilay amar kasha. If you just had the first Mishnah, I would think that lechatchila a shliach should do that. But if he just said one or the other, if he said b'fanei nechtam without b'fanei nechtam, it would be kosher. Kamash Milan, you need both, because I would have thought that this whole thing is Rabbanan anyway. Because why should I assume that a get is not kosher? The whole thing was a chashash Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan said, say b'fanei nechtam. I would have thought that maybe it's just if b'diavad you said one of the two words, one of the two statements, it would be kosher. That's why this Mishnah reinforces that you must say both. The shliach must say it's both. B'fanei nechtam, kulay pasal. Hey chetzyon. So hey chetzyon. Which half? It says the guy said, I saw it was written half, and it was signed. I saw the get written halfway, and I saw it was written lishma, and I saw it was signed. I saw both witnesses sign. It's possible. Hey chetzyon. Which half did this guy say? Did the shliach say that he saw it was written lishma? If he saw the first half of the get written to Shema, And then he says, I didn't see the rest of the get, but then I saw the Eidim sign. So why isn't that not kosher? If the first line is written Lishma, the name of the man, the name of the woman, then even if the rest of the get, the rest of the stuff, the template of the get is not written Lishma, that's also okay. Shuven Itzarach. So basically, he is testifying that it was written Lishma. He saw the names written Lishma. He saw the first half written Lishma. Elama Rashi, no, he's saying Ketzia Achron. He only saw the latter half. He saw the template that was written Lishma, but he doesn't know if the name of the man and the name of the woman are written Lishma. So basically, he didn't say B'fani Nechtav. It's disqualified, and that's why it's puzzle. If he says B'fani Nechtav, the latter half, and he's B'fani Nechtav Kulei, that is no good. Then the Mishnah said B'fani Nechtav Kulei, B'fani Nechtav Chetzion. Amar Rav Puzzle. Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda makes a statement about something else, but we're going to try to swing it into the Mishnah, and that will be this our last discussion of tonight. What happens if you have? Imagine this: the shliach comes and says, "I saw the whole thing written lishma, and I saw only one aid sign." Says Rav Chisda, if two aidim come and say and testify that the second person that signed is valid, is a kosher person, and they recognize his signatures. So you have the shliach saying on one aid, and the two aidim are saying on the other aid of the get, puzzle, it's puzzle. Why my tama? Why not? He says that if you're going to use the kiyam get way, the normal way to validate a get, then you need to have two aidim on each of the signatures. And because you're only validating the get this way, you're validating the get with two aidim on just one of the signatures. And the other signature, you're using the leniency of the chachamim that believe the shliach. So that's no good. Either you validate a get through 100% via the shliach, or you validate the get 100% via aidim. But you can't mix and match over here. That's the chiddush of Rav Chisda. So Maskil Rav doesn't understand that. Why not? What would have happened if the shliach, after saying I saw one aid sign, would say I saw the second aid sign? You would say it's kosher because it's the shliach. He's one person. He's saying, and he's the shliach saying that he saw the second aid sign. So now that you have two people saying on the second aid that he signed, why would you say that's puzzle? Two aidim should be more of a chiddush to say that it's kosher in that case, right? Two aidim saying on the second aid, that makes it even more kosher. Ella Amar Rava says like this: Afilu, we go to Amar Beis. Afilu hu ve'acha be'idim achasim is yad sheni pasol. Wow! If the shliach would, instead of saying b'fani nechtam, he said b'fani nechtam, I saw one aid sign, and then the shliach takes another person with him and says on the second aid, I saw the second aid sign. So then that makes it worse, puzzle. Because this is something he should have said himself. I saw the second aid sign. But if he says, no, I'm going to validate the second signature via taking my friend to be an aid, that would make it possible because it makes it worse. So the Gemara says, my time, why should it make it worse? People will say that that in a case like this, that sometimes you have 3/4 of the money coming out of one person. Because what would happen in a normal case when you have a star and each aid said, that's my signature, we believe that. But what would happen if one of the aidim died? So the second aid says, that's my signature. And then he says that, and him and another aid say, aidus on the second signature. So you have one aid that because of him, we are moitzi mamam, we're validating a star that draws money out of somebody, that obligates somebody else with money, based on the testimony of one person, he does 3/4 of the work. He's saying aidus on his own signature, and he's a partner to say aidus on the deceased aid signature. So 3/4 of the money this star is now 3/4 of money being expenditure because of the aidus of one person. And we have a rule in the Chumash that says al pi shnayim aidim. Yachum Davar. That it's valid only if you could effectuate half of a shtar, 2 Eidim, each one participating 50%. Not one is doing 75% of the work and the other 8 is doing 25% of the work. That's what Rava said. Maskala Ravashi says, this still doesn't make sense, Rava. If the Shliach himself said, I saw the second 8 sign, so the Shliach is one person, we believe him. Now that the Shliach took a partner with him and said 8 is on the second signature, that would invalidate a get. I don't hear it, says Ravashi. Elamar Ravashi says, Afili Amar Ani Hu Eicheni Paso. My Tama, Oikula became a get, Oikula becomes Chaman. Ravashi says this case, that if the Shliach said, I saw 1 8 sign, okay, then he comes along and says, I recognize the second guy's signature. In other words, he doesn't say Befani Nechtam, the second signature. I know the second guy's signature. Or he says, I am the second guy's signature. I am the second guy. The Shliach says, I am the second signature. So a person is believed to recognize his own signature. So he's not validating the second signature because he's a Shliach. He's validating it because he's doing Kiyum Aget, the normal way, when a person says, that's my signature on a shtar. So therefore, he's mixing and matching. The first signature on the shtar, he's validating because he's a Shliach. The second signature, he's validating because of Kiyum Aget, that a person can validate his own signatures. And that's no good. Either you validate a get via the normal ways of verifications, with the way Chachamim made, where a person could either have 2 Eidim, or the person who signed himself says, this is my signature, or it's the Chachamim where the Shliach says everything, that I saw both Eidim sign in the get. They're not me. So that's the case of Rav Ashi, and then we had Rava, and we had Rav Chizda. Now we learned to the Mishnah, and this will end off. If Befani Nechtav Kula, Befani Nechtav Chetziyah Pasul. Here's that case in the Mishnah. Now, what is our Mishnah talking about? What happened? The guy said, this is exactly what the Shliach said. The Shliach said, I saw half the signature sign. What happens to the other 8? That there's nobody saying, what is the Shliach effectively saying? That there's no Eidim on the second signature. So that's no chiddush to tell me that this is a pasul again. Hashte echad oim b'fani nechtam, the echad oim b'fani nechtam, the high kamasa da kula ksiva, high kamasa kula ksima pasul, tatsi mebayle. In other words, if the Mishnah already told you that if 2 shlichim bring the get, and one says b'fani nechtam, and the other says I saw it being signed, you still don't believe it, and that person is saying I saw it signed, I saw both people sign, both Eidim signing the get, it's a pasul get. Certainly, if the guy is saying, I only saw one person sign the get, I didn't see the other person signing the get, certainly it's possible. What's the novelty of this Mishnah? So the Gemara says, it must be Oikid the Rava, Oikid the Ravashi, Lapukid the Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda's case is the most hardest case to say that the Mishnah is invalidating Rav Chizda's case. Either the Mishnah is going like Rava, which would invalidate if the Shliach got somebody else and validated the second signature, or like Rav Ashi, if the Shliach said, I am the second signature. But in those cases, it's possible, but not like Rav Chizda, because Rav Chizda, if 2 people from the street validated the second signature, that should be kosher. So maybe our Mishnah disagrees with what Rav Chizda said. And says the Gemara, finally, Rav Chizda will tell you, this the whole Mishnah seems to be redundant. If the Mishnah says that if a shliach just said b'fani nichtav, and he didn't say I saw it signed, the Mishnah says it's pasul. Why do I need that chiddush for? Ella, the Mishnah is loizu avzu katari. The Mishnah doesn't really tell you chidushim. It just says that if he just said the signature, if he just said it's written b'fani nichtav, and he didn't say b'fani nechtam, it's pasul. And then the Mishnah goes in steps. If he said b'fani nichtav, and he said b'fani nechtam chetzyoy, and he means to say, I only saw 1 8 sign, but not the other 8 sign, and nobody validated the other 8. The Mishnah says, Hachinami, and it's not a chiddush, and therefore it's pasul. It's not really a chiddush that the Mishnah is telling you, but the Mishnah is going in steps. But the Mishnah is not dealing with any cases that have to do with when he said before who's coming to say Edus on the second signature. Perhaps our Mishnah is talking about nobody came to say Edus on the second signature, and yet the Mishnah feels that it tells you this case, even though it's not such a novelty and no chiddush to passel such a get. Okay, Be'ez Hashem will continue with a new sugya tomorrow.